Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another webinar by School News. Today we are going to talk about future-proofing our schools. Now, future-proofing, the moment pandemic started, the first thing that we all faced was that are we ready to handle the situation as an educational institution? The first responsibility of a school is to make sure that our children are future ready. But even our institutions were not ready to adopt whatever the situation was. However, it's actually commendable the way all schools adapted to the situation and how quickly they were able to transform, and they were able to get into a mode where no matter where you are sitting, no matter what kind of technology you have, what kind of stuff you have, schools were able to make sure that the knowledge reaches the child. But shouldn't we be prepared for what may come next? And as an educational institute, I think it is our responsibility to understand what the future would be and how do we prepare our students and ourselves for that. So today what we are going to do is we are going to talk about future-proofing your school with an emphasis on the technology as well as teachers. So how do you blend technology and teachers for better teaching, better learning outcomes? And we have with us 4 amazing panelists, and I have been interacting with them for many years now at different forums, different levels, and it's actually an honor to have them here in one forum. We have Dr. Arunabh Singh, who is director of NWS, who has been doing some amazing work with his students, quite creative. We also have Mr. Siddharth Rajgarhia, who is director and chief learner of DPS Varanasi, DPS Nasik, and DPS Pune. We have Ms. Prabha Dixit, who comes from Akshar Abrol International School from Chennai. Now, with these 3 educators, what I have experienced, I've shared stage with Prabha ma'am earlier, and I have been to the schools of Mr. Arunabh and Mr. Rajgarhia a few times. What I've seen is that it is not the usual classroom teaching that these guys do. And now, in this situation, we have another person who is going to add value to it, Mr. Ravi Kittu, who is director of PowerSchool, who brings in that element of technology. Now, future, we are already working on it. How do we blend technology with that future is what we are going to discuss today. I'm not going to waste too much time on this introductory discussion. I'll jump straight to the topic. And by discussion, I'll start with Dr. Arunabh. Arunabh, I am going to give you one word, and whatever comes to your mind first, you have to tell me. So the word for you is future. What do you mean by future? How do you define future? Over to you.
It's here.
It's here. Lovely. You want to expand, or do I hold on this word and we come to the next question?
I can expand. Actually, we are living in different centuries within this country. The sheer span or spectrum in which we operate, which is 1/5 of the world's population. So we're actually living different centuries. So there are schools that are 100 years ahead to that school in back of beyond. So the future is already here.
Lovely, lovely. Siddharth, over to you. How do you define future?
I think future is tech-enabled. Future is, personalized. Future is experiential. And I think, like Arunabh said, that there's so much diversity that we are working around in this country that you can see all of that. So for a school who's 50 years back or 10 years back, you can see how they would look like in the future.
Okay. Prabha ma'am, future.
I think to me, the word future is perhaps best described by Alvin Toffler. I am reminded of his book, Future Shock. And I think it's very apt for today's topic of the webinar. We have really have to future-proof if we don't want to go into future shock. So, yeah.
Interesting. Mr. Kittu, how do you define future?
The future in education, I think, is it's around personalization. A class of 30 or 50 students, how can it be made as effective as one teacher teaching one student, right? The right technology in the hands of the teacher would enable that. So I firmly believe that, and I think that's where the future is heading, and the technology already exists today in much parts.
And that's quite interesting because since you mentioned teachers, what I have recently, actually not just recently, these days, Siddharth also became a little more active on social media. And from last few days, he has been posting all those pictures where he is interacting with students and teachers, which I know from many years he has been doing with kids, just that now he decided to let others also know, which is a very good thing. So Siddharth, I'm going to come to you with my next question. When we say teachers, so how do you empower teachers in your school? And one is your own personal experience in all the DPS that you run, and one is from the general perspective. How do you think we should empower teachers? Siddharth.
Vikram, I think empowerment, comes along if there are two aspects in a schooling scenario, specifically with the teaching community. The first aspect I would say is, are the teachers feeling safe? Are the teachers feeling psychologically safe in that environment? And the second aspect I would say is the management, is the school holding the teachers accountable? And if there's a right balance of the two, if there's a right balance of psychological safety and accountability, I think the teachers are then empowered. And many ways to empower, and something that we try and practice is to building communities of practice within the teaching body, right? So creating those scenarios where teachers can create a shared understanding, where teachers can discuss their problems of practice. So creating those scenarios where there's enough opportunity of professional development, creating those scenarios where there's enough opportunity of professional development which is linked to the need of the teacher, and the professional development isn't standardized, right? Creating those opportunities wherein the school is not moving towards standardization, but rather empowering the teacher to use creativity and helping the teacher learn how to better plan their lessons, helping them learn to grow their mindset, helping them embrace the growth mindset. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but the matrix with which I would look for empowerment in the teaching body is the right balance of psychological safety and accountability.
That actually makes sense. And I think when we talk of this kind of environment, one big challenge that schools face is that, and this is something that I have personally also experienced, teachers, they do interact with each other when they're in staff room or when they're in staff gatherings and all. But somehow this discussion is limited to certain topics which are not deep into curriculum. So while we say that, yes, teachers should be empowered, teachers should learn better, they should also grow, they are there to teach other kids. They can learn from each other also, which is happening in few schools, but not all schools. I've personally seen schools where it is happening. And this is where I have seen certain schools that are taking good help of technology to empower teachers, so that within a school, within a campus, they have different blocks or they have different branches. Like in your case, you have different branches. So a teacher sitting in Pune, how does the teacher learn from another teacher in Nasik or the one in Varanasi? So maybe these kind of things can actually help a lot. And Arunabh, I know, has been into this whole technology thing from early days. So Arunabh, I'm coming to you. How do you empower your teachers using technology, or how do you blend technology for better learning outcomes?
Okay. If I were to ever do another PhD, this is going to be the topic. But I will try to put at least my synopsis here in the next 2 to 3 minutes. You need to understand the challenge. When the teacher of a middle school goes into the classroom, in all probability, he knows the least about technology in that room. And everybody in the classroom knows this. So one part of it is, my class management, second is content, and third is now this technology. And the situation that a teacher is in now is, if I'm not able to use technology properly, I can't deliver. It's not a choice anymore. 2 years back, it was a choice. And I would often say, while technology may not replace teachers, but teachers who use technology effectively will replace those who don't. I've been saying this for a decade now, and then all of a sudden, it just became true for everybody. What we attempt to do is recognize, first of all, the challenge. And within the school, we've created a help desk to say, well, certainly there are going to be problems. So let us create a help desk. There is somebody who's designated, hopefully like almost like a first aid box of IT in the school. And either we would have a solution, or we will start researching. And by the time you're done with this class, we would have come back with a solution. So that really helped our teachers very well. And another low-tech thing that we did was, every school has a WhatsApp group of all teachers, or almost all schools do. So in that, we started this thing that, every wing's head has to share one highlight from their wing in that main group. So even though I'm a primary school teacher, but my wing head is going to give a visual of what I was doing, what platform I was using, and how I was doing a good job while at it. And this did two things. A, it gave the teacher an opportunity. I am going to try something new. If this works, there is an opportunity for me to get celebrated. At the same time, what it also did was, it gave other people an opportunity to know that such a tool exists and this is what you can do with it. So, it worked, and it worked really well. We've been able to sustain the attention spans of our children. And I think in hindsight is always 2020, but this worked well for us. Thank you.
Interesting. This worked well for you. In fact, I have personally experienced this. There were two incidents where we were stuck and your help desk actually was helpful. One session was going online, in one case session was going offline. But Arunabh, I have a follow-up question on this connected to my personal experience also. Do you think it's easy for a teacher to conduct a class which goes in the hybrid model? I mean, on one side, we have half of the class sitting in the online mode, half of the class sitting in the offline mode. How smooth all that is going? What do you think?
Of the three possible formats of online only, offline only, and hybrid by far is the hardest. And it is not incrementally harder. It is a different, you're not comparing apples to apples. So, but once you recognize this challenge and then try to see what is the simplest way in which we can solve it, it is solvable. But only after this recognition that whatever, so we had learned at schools, we learned how to teach offline. Then we learned how to teach online. And when we started to teach online, all of our offline could be kept aside because that classroom management trick wasn't going to work anymore. Now that we need to do hybrid, we are needing to keep all the online stuff also separately and relearning. So if you are acknowledging that there is a lot to learn and you hardly know anything, then you are more accepting of this new challenge. But to every teacher who's listening to this and is currently teaching in a hybrid classroom, you're a superhero. You are an absolute superhero. Thank you for doing what you're doing for kids.
So true, so true. With this, I will come to Prabha ma'am, because Prabha ma'am heads an IB school, right ma'am? Akshara Prabha is an IB school. Now, IB schools focus on experiential learning a lot. Other schools also do, but in IB school, that experiential learning takes the center stage. And what we have seen about, when we talk about experiential learning, project-based approach, within India, what we have seen till now is where kids get together, they learn from teacher, they involve themselves in certain kind of activity. Now these kids are sitting in their own environments in their homes. Even NEP talks about experiential learning. Everywhere we are hearing, make it project-based, experiential, this is, but how easy you think it has become, especially during the lockdown, and if other incidents happen like this, where kids are not even able to meet each other and they still have to conduct all those projects and experiments. How are you coping up with that?
Sure. I think in a sense, you kind of touched on a part of the answer, and So did Dr. Arunabh Singh, because when we talk of experiential learning or integrated learning within an IB program, it's largely about how the project-based learning happens. And like you said, you may be an IB school, you may not be an IB school. There are many schools doing a lot of things around project-based learning. Now, some of the fundamental principles around project-based learning are about allowing collaboration, discussion of ideas, sharing of thoughts. So it was about what could be done in a physical classroom, or actually physically putting desks together, allowing for flexible furniture arrangements, allow for discussions, allow for listening, recording of thoughts, put up those flip charts around the classroom. Those needed to get, in some sense, replicated in an online world. So we've been using a lot of these online tools that are available for that, which allows for that collaboration, discussion happening. And I think also the timetabling of the student day also becomes important, because everything cannot be a complete whole class sort of a class happening online. So we've had to split according to their age group, according to the different units that they are involved in. Some part of the day is the entire class. Other parts of the day is when children come back in small groups, so that it still allows for facilitation of small group interactions, breakout rooms. We've had to, of course, for older children, breakout rooms was easier. For younger children, within breakout rooms needed to be monitored. So you need to do a whole lot of different kinds of meet links. But there are a lot of tools available today where you can allow for, discussion boards to happen. There's Jamboard, there's Padlet. All those allow children to be able to go share their thoughts, even the entire G Suite of applications. And you can go put out there, and then your teammates can go in and add their thoughts. You can use that as a discussion point. And in any project-based learning, it always stems from identifying a problem in the real world. Now, that doesn't change whether it's an offline world or an online world. You just have to tweak the way that the presentation happens a little differently. You can no longer do models and charts, things that you would do for a physical world. Instead, you'd rather prefer that in fact, this has become a great opportunity for both teachers and for students to be able to explore some of those wonderful presentation apps that are out there, and then be able to build their technological skills a little further, because then your presentation modes are changing. So it's about using those little online tools a little differently, I think, is what where the key is to the whole thing.
Interesting. And you know what, you actually when you started speaking, I came up with a follow-up question, but in your answer you answered that part as well. What I've experienced is, in a few schools in India, what they did when they moved to online classes, they kind of replicated their offline timetable as it is. They did not tweak it, they did not change it. Though with time, many schools realized that, because earlier maybe they were thinking that this is just a few weeks or maybe a month or two thing, and then when they come back, they should continue with the same practice. So they should be in the habit. So if there is a fruit break happening, if there is some other sort of break happening, that is also continued, without realizing that when a kid gets up and sits at in front of his laptop or phone, he's actually having that food plate which stays with him for the rest of the day, and he's munching continuously. Kids have been doing that. But yes, how do you adapt to the scenario that now whatever we were doing offline, exact that thing will not work, and according to this new scenario, how we should reschedule the time of our children and how we should put them to problem solving better, that itself becomes one project. So lovely, that's interesting. Now with this, I want to move to Ravi Kittu, but before that, there's a little announcement for all the participants. Thanks for joining here. If you have any question, there is a Q&A section. Just click on that button, type in your question. You can target, specify a speaker if you wish someone should answer, or just put the question here and we'll put it in front of the panelists and try to answer it. Now, coming to Ravi. Ravi, you come from the different side of education industry. You are what we should say the service provider to the education sector, the schools, the education institutes, where you are enabling them, where you are bringing the element of technology within. So we guys understand the problem. We understand that there are many things that need to be done. Many of us have already done, implemented some of the solutions. if I were you, and let's for a minute forget that you are associated with PowerSchool or any such organization. For a minute, let's say that you understand technology well, much better than a layman or a school teacher. So, what do you recommend? What kind of solutions should a school implement when talking about technology? Ravi.
Okay, great questions. We've been talking to thousands of schools. So we do software for schools. That's the only thing we do. And we've been talking to thousands of schools in India over the last couple of years. And I believe schools have an enormous opportunity in front of them today, right? To adopt technology in the classroom. See, in the past, most of the schools, I'm talking about mainstream schools. Of course, there are elite schools that have gone beyond this, but the mainstream schools in the past, the focus has really been around school administration solutions, right? What's called ERPs, admissions, fees management, record keeping, transport, things that help run the school with less administrative headaches, right? That's where their initial focus has been. Now, in the past 2 years, schools have started, because of COVID, forced to adopt some of the essential tech in the classroom itself, right? Just to keep lights on. It's online conferencing, being able to share learning material assessments through, things like WhatsApp. These are essentially stopgap arrangements just to keep the lights on. Some schools are hoping to go back, and when all is over, they're waiting to go back to what they were doing earlier. But some schools are seeing the opportunity of how to use this to leapfrog to the next stage, right? Because the opportunity is to go beyond what they are doing today. To use technology fundamentally to transform the classroom, the teaching learning process, right? Not just administrative things, how to help students excel. Let me give 3-4 examples of what technology can do in the classroom. Of course, some of the schools like, what Arunabh and Siddharth and Prabha are running, probably adopt a lot of this, but that's not the same with mainstream schools. So let me give some examples of how technology can really help schools leapfrog into the next stage in terms of student outcomes. The first is what I think is a fundamental handicap in the way classrooms have structured itself, right? Classrooms are, let's say, 30 to 50 people. If you are a teacher and if you give a lecture to 40 students, how many understood it? Did everybody understand? Of course not even one lecture, right? So half of, maybe people didn't understand because some of them didn't understand the prerequisites. They're sitting in a calculus class and they don't understand algebra very well, right? So what should an effective teacher do? They should identify those people, find out exactly why they didn't understand it, and help them understand it so that they can get back to the class. But even the best teacher with the best intention doesn't have the time to do that, right? Because the classroom itself is large. She has to keep it going, right? So that is one. Technology can help address that, for example, right? How do you take a big class and make it in a way it can be personalized? Second is an opportunity around what I think of as opportunity around learning resources, right? So today, there is so much wonderful content available today on YouTube, on Khan Academy. Enterprising students go find it themselves. Those who make effective use of it really excel. But it's not easy for them to do in a structured way, right? How can schools incorporate that into structured learning? It's not just what the teacher is teaching, but how can we bring that together in a structured learning for students? Third is, I would say, around assessments, right? We all know that daily practice or regular practice and assessments is very useful. It's a very critical part of learning. But students don't have the time to evaluate it every day. If I taught calculus today and gave assessment to 50 students in 3 different classes, tomorrow, unless I correct it and give feedback to the student, it's not as effective, right? So the teacher doesn't have the time to do that on a day-to-day basis. And technology can help there, right? So that's another example of where technology can help teachers. And finally, let's go back to what we call mastery, right? Which is, let's say a student scored 80% in math or physics, right? A midterm. Now, what do we know at the next level? What are the things they're really good at? What are the things that they are not yet understanding within that math or within that physics? What does that 20% amount to, right? It's different for different students. Not 80% of all the 80% students are the same, right? Well, so what topics does he or she should know, don't know well? How can we help them? How can we help close the gap? So these are some examples of where technology can help at the core of what schools are focused on. Student outcomes, right? Not just on administration. Now, the great news is the technology to help all of this exists today. and it is affordable. So schools think, it has to be expensive. It's not necessarily, right? Just like Gmail or WhatsApp doesn't cost more to Ambani than to us. It's the same. So similarly, technology can, it's affordable, to be used at mainstream schools everywhere. And the nice thing is, both in terms of devices and teachers' willingness to work with tech, that's gone in the last 2 years. That's been great. So that hurdle is gone. So, and it's easy enough to use too, this technology. So sections of schools are already adopting this, but those who are not doing that are depriving themselves and will be left behind. So I think that's my sense of where the school system is and what the opportunities are.
And we'll talk more about this. I have got one more very interesting question for all the panelists, and I know attendees, all our participants will enjoy the answer to that question. But before I move to that question, we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A section. Maybe we can take one or two, and then towards the end, we will answer whatever is pending. So the first question is, and let me start with Prabha ma'am. The question is how to motivate the teachers to connect the students to the problems in the real world, as they are mostly used to get connected to traditional methods. So how do you motivate teachers to connect the students to the problems? Asked by Sudharani Aturi, I'm pronouncing it right. Prabha ma'am, if you would like to answer.
I think a good professional development training program at any school is a must. And this comes, it could be in small communities of practice, it could be professional learning communities, it could be in the form of book learning clubs, it could also be training, in-service training sessions that happen all year round. But I think, as a society, we've grown up perhaps not being exposed ourselves as students to think of anything outside of a textbook or a chapter. And I think that's a fundamental understanding and a state of compassion that any school leader needs to come with. That it is not that teachers do not want to change. It is that it's years of conditioning in the way of working that they are not able to suddenly make a shift over. And it doesn't happen by just snapping fingers. So it is a very slow process. And it's something that from a school leadership level needs a lot of attention and sponsorship towards. When I say sponsorship, I'm not really necessarily meaning in terms of a financial or a monetary sponsorship, but the fact that you're behind this idea is something that across the school teachers need to know. So it could be simple things of, taking a current news item, discussing it within a small, community of teachers. It could be just to take a lesson from, let's say it's a group of teachers doing history across grades 6, 7, and 8. It could be just taking perhaps one area, which could be maybe government systems or something from civics, right? If they were social studies teachers, and getting the teachers first to say, why don't you read up about governance systems, across the world? What do you think about the similarities and differences between these? What does that mean in terms of the way we see governance issues in our local area, wherever we are, whether we are in Chennai or Lucknow or Punjab, this can actually be done. So I think to begin with something very, very small like that, and department heads or team leads, whatever every school has, I think they need to model that first. They need to practice it themselves, because this is about a way of thinking. It's a thought process more than anything else, and the thought process doesn't change overnight. So I think it needs to come at all levels. But certainly it's the people who are leading teams who need to show the way first, who need to practice it themselves, then start taking it slowly into other teams.
Very well said. Yeah, very well said, ma'am. Sensitizing teachers is most important. In-service training is one critical element. Sometimes it happens that schools think that our teachers are so busy that we are not able to pull them out of their running schedule and put them into in-service training a few days, something. But it is actually required very much. Arunabh, Siddharth, Ravi, do you want to add something to this? None? Okay, cool.
If Siddharth doesn't want to say something, I will.
I just noticed.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So on staff training, often. So okay, I'll take the bullet for this. I know when I go for conferences, at least a few years back, people in the school would have been sort of scared. He's going to come back and he's going to say, now this is what we're going to do. And now he's gone again. It's good that he's away from the school for 2 days, but he will come back and he will start something else again. So, and then we moved from there and we said, no. There is this ad hoc enablement, ad hoc planning. This doesn't work. And any kind of teacher training or teacher enablement has to be well constructed. It needs to originate from the classroom observation, through peer work, through self-appraisal. And you're essentially, ideally you're wanting to plan it half a year or a full year before you would actually be doing it. And no training that is 1 day, 2 day, 3 day in the year only is going to work unless it's sort of an action research with things going forward. Now, this is not the luxury that we would have been able to afford when the pandemic challenge came to us. But even here, so I was in one of these webinars like the one that we are having right now. And I remember it was February and there was a school principal from a school in Hong Kong who'd been speaking about lockdowns and how the civil unrest had led to closure of schools and now the pandemic. And I'm like, oh, wow, if it's happening there, it can happen to us. So we went to the drawing board and we said, okay, fine, let us start working on a new skill. If there is no lockdown, lovely. If there's lockdown, at least we'll find ourselves prepared. So we were actually doing full-blown trainings on how do you deliver class online even before the pandemic hit us. And the day the lockdown happened, next day we were in school. So let's be more calculative and plan our CPD and spare the teachers from ad hoc work. Thank you.
I completely second. I think I was in the same boat, Arunabh, what you shared. And, it's really important that CPD is continuous and only then you reap those benefits. And what Prabha ma'am said, I believe that it's got to really come from the school leader. The school leader really needs to model the process. I think modeling is one of the key ways in which we do those, we should do, teacher development, communities of practice, and a space for, a shared understanding is really important if you want to develop a practice wherein you are regularly connecting teaching to real world and, real world scenarios.
And I want to add, I echo what everybody shared here. And I want to add one thing, right? I think, like everybody said, it's fundamentally a mindset, right? For how do teachers seek knowledge? How do they, keep themselves abreast? How does the school enable that? So part of it is mindset. Part of it is also tool set, right? Which is what are things that can help enable schools to do that in a structured way and not necessarily an ad hoc way, right? How, for example, the same software that we used that is used to help students learn, we have ways for teachers to use that too. Building those community of practices, sharing resources with each other, having discussions, not just in their own school, but across the globe, right? So 60,000 schools use our software, and there's a community of teachers across the globe, across subjects, and it's a great way to connect teachers and also give the tool sets to the schools and teachers to do that in a very effective, structured way.
Interesting. Thank you for the answer. And I hope Ms. Atluri will be satisfied with the answer that our panelists had shared. We have one more question. And this question is, let me put it this way. It's quite close to my heart. Also, I've been debating on this issue for so long with different schools. And every time I get different answers. And now during the lockdown, the concept has completely changed. So this question is more closer to the lockdown aspect, though I have been talking about this in general. So the question here is, and we'll, Siddharth, this time we'll start with you. The question is, how much is it important to put the strict rule to wear uniform during online session and keep the camera on during all sessions? This is by Ms. Arundhati Das. Siddharth, let's start with you. Uniform and camera.
So I think, firstly, I think there are two questions. One is uniform, one is camera. And, firstly, I'll share about the uniform. My personal opinion, I think uniform, what is important in the online scenario is that we are engaging students. We are engaging students such that they're learning. And if in that process, uniform is an enabler, go ahead, do it. But if it doesn't matter, then I would say, it's not really important. And the second question is the camera. Again, I would say that it really depends on the context of the school. If it's a really niche school and the problems that the school is facing is not of the device, not of the connection, then maybe there's a different decision. But if it's a different sort of a school, where it's a mid-range school where some children are logging in through mobiles while the others are logging through laptops, heavy duty laptops, I think it's a completely different decision. So we really need to understand the context. But I think the crux is that in the online learning space, if these two are enabling better teaching and learning, then yes, we should go ahead, find ways to have children adhere to these. But if it is not, then maybe we have to be open-minded, and we cannot let our old thinking drive this.
And I will bring in my personal question also in here. Can this answer be taken to the offline mode, as in when schools are complete, everything goes back to normal, we are back in our schools, though I don't know how do we even define normal now, but once kids are back in schools, how important is uniform?
Is that to me?
Let's from you, we then move to Arunabh.
Again, Vikram, I would say the context is very important. We can't generalize this decision. So context, I think this is a learning that I have from Arunabh. Every time I have a question, I think this is what I ask myself, that is this right for your context? And I think that is something that every school leader needs to ask.
Okay. Thank you, Siddharth. Arunabh, online cameras, and can we do away uniform in offline also?
Right. So what you're talking about potentially is engagement, and these are only ways in which you're able to see engagement. So let's talk about this session right now. So when we started, we were 176 people. This has gone up to 210. I would want to believe people are sticking because the panelists are very engaging. But I also know that you get the certificate only when your Zoom session has been on from the start to the end. So right now we have inconclusive data. I don't know what is keeping the audience in this session. And I feel for those teachers who just converted an offline lesson plan to an online lesson plan, they faced a bigger challenge of engagement. But wherever schools were able to retrain and regroup and reorient and say, well, this changes the entire dynamics of teaching, those teachers have not faced as many challenges. The camera being on or not being on, there is that child who doesn't have the camera on and is not on the screen. Then there is a child who has the camera on, but the bandwidth issue is preventing that feed to be coming to you. And third is a child who is sitting with the uniform on and says, "Fine, I have the camera on." So let us again go back to our drawing board and say we need to fix the problem, not fix the signs of problem. Let's look at engagement. And uniform in the offline mode, perhaps when it was invented as a concept, would have come from the need of there has to be uniformity of identity.
Right.
And there has to be a feeling of belonging. Maybe the armies would have got the uniforms to start with, because we wanted to say, we are a team, we do this together, we collaborate. And eventually it went to fancy blazers. The British got to us, and you know more about that than I do. So, and then they stuck with us. But there are times when uniforms are absolutely uncomfortable to wear. For example, if you're in Delhi and you're expecting a child in the in temperatures of 40, 42, 44 degrees centigrade that he's going to wear a tie, then no, he's not going to wear a tie. So we need to be more sensible with what are we trying to get kids to wear. That's my thought.
It makes sense. Yeah. Thanks, Arunabh. Prabha, ma'am, you want to add something to this?
Sure. I mean, I think I completely second what both Siddharth and Arunabh said. I think we look at this essentially in two ways. What does this, whether it's a camera or the uniform, got to do with both from a student's safety perspective? And the other thing is, what does this got to do with what this has with the value system that we have at school? Because even in the online world, student safety is a matter of massive concern for all of us as educators, for of course parents as well. And if keeping the cameras on and wearing uniforms can help towards ensuring that there is that both psychological, emotional safety of the child that is going to be maintained in the classroom, then it certainly should be done. But of course, like I think Siddharth said over and over again, it's about the context. If you're dealing with a set of parents and students who have serious connectivity and device issues, it's impractical to talk about the camera on. But I think student safety is something that must be kept in mind, whether it's online or offline, uniforms, camera. The other part is the value system of the school. For us at school, our classroom sizes are small. We are a small community as a school. When the teaching learning pedagogy is largely about interactions, discussion, collaboration, we pretty much insist that the camera for our students need to be on. Of course, there are rare days when certain children are not able to for certain reasons. But by and large, I'm saying it is expected that they keep it on, because it is about building the value system of saying that, nobody wants to talk to a black box. Right? You want to see each other. You want to demonstrate the respect for the other person. You want to show that you're listening, your body language, the empathy that you can demonstrate even in an online world is something that's possible if you are able to see each other, even though you're not in the physical presence of the other. So I think it should also tie back to the value system we have at school, and also the practicality of being able to stick to that value system in an online world.
So true. You're right, ma'am. Actually, this I have experienced as a teacher. So I teach in 2 universities, and it's almost impossible to get a college kid to switch on his or her camera. For school kids, it is still possible. When I am interacting with school kids, I tell them to quickly switch on their cameras. But in college, it has become impossible, and my entire semester goes talking to a blank screen. So as a teacher, also, it's not very easy. I completely understand your point. I hope, Arunabh, your question was answered. We'll come back to more questions from the Q&A panel. But I have this one question which I'm kind of itching to ask, especially to the school leaders. So we are going to start with you, Arunabh, this time. Let's say I give you a magic wand, and you can bring any technological advancement to your school. What would that be?
I would want to find out how can I enable kids to have grit.
Lovely.
Can technology assist me in developing grit? And if it can, then the rest of the learning will follow by itself.
Amazing. Lovely.
This was the most difficult question. I've been thinking about this for a while. Yeah, I think I will settle with grit. But if you were a genie and you gave me 3 choices, then I have 2 others.
Right now, it's just a magic wand. Maybe next webinar, I will turn into a genie coming out of a lamp and then granting you 3 or maybe 5 wishes. I'll be a little more generous. I'll go ahead with 5.
In the first wish, I will ask for 10, and then so on and so forth.
Amazing. Prabha, I'm coming to you. The magic wand.
Okay. I was just hoping the other panelists would answer first, and I said my magic wand would be, like a plus of what everybody else wants as well. Well, I think it would be delightful to have one integrated system, which is from a technology integration perspective and not so much from an implementation perspective. So it's not about the hardwares that we put in, and we can have the best of hardwares at school. But if technology truly cannot be leveraged and used as an enabler for teaching learning ultimately, then I mean, what is the point of all the hardware, right? And I think we have a lot of tools, a lot of products out there today. But I think, kind of integrating everything into one space, whether it's teaching, learning, delivery, assessments, um, um, perhaps even from an administrative angle of the school, and just access to devices for children. And,
Yeah, that's actually quite required, interesting, and I think Ravi, PowerSchool also has these kind of features. I want you to talk in detail about this, but let's first listen to Siddharth sir, what he has to say, and then we come to you, Ravi. Siddharth ji.
So I would want, I would want a different magic wand. I would want a magic wand that provides us, provides me with, enable all of us with an enabling mindset. And, but if it were technology, I would really want to technology to provide a lot of data. And I would want like that every decision that every school leader takes is based on data and it is not on anecdotes.
Interesting. This is quite interesting because Ravi, I think we have established all those points where PowerSchool and its products are, kind of addressing. So we are quite close. So how about we go to Ravi Kittu, and Ravi, this is my personal request. If you can tell us about the products that you guys are having, and if possible, if you can show us some screenshots, or I don't know if you have some sort of presentation or something which you can bring in, so we get an idea that what schools desire. Is all that already in market or not, Ravi?
Yeah, let me do that. Thanks, Vikram. I just want to, speak to what Arunabh had brought up, right? How do you build grit? So I'm going to, I'll give a brief overview about what we do as a company, and also show parts of a learning management system that does address most of what it is. I think out of all the three, probably it's close to what Prabha and Siddharth had wanted, right? How do we have a holistic system that takes care of everything and that provides the data to make decisions? But the interesting thing is what Dr. Arunabh had said, how do you build grit? So, it's very obvious from our own experience, and it's very obvious in research too, that it's not the intelligence or who excels. It's not just who is intelligent, but really a lot of the other softer factors, the behavioral things that really impact success, right? Who's got the most motivation, who's engaged, who's got grit, who's got persistence, right? So how do we build those so learning is not just about giving them the right lessons, but building those endurance in learning, right? So building those social, emotional aspects of students. So I'm not going to show that software today, but we did recently acquire a company. The only thing that does is this: how do you build the behavioral characteristics in students? So it's an evolving thing. There is no magic bullet, no one yet, but it is certainly something that technology is trying to address today. So good that Arunabh brought it up, because usually we don't hear about that aspect of things when people are looking for tech. So let me, to Vikram, to your question, let me take 15 minutes to share what we do. I'm going to speak to not so much about how to do things in our software, but to walk through what kind of opportunities, what kind of things that the software enables, right? So some of the problems that we discussed here already, right? How do we work in a hybrid system? How do we enable communities of practice? How do we, both for students and for teachers? So I'm going to walk you through some of that. So let me share my screen and first, give a brief about the company. I'm not going to bore you all, but I'm going to give you enough context to see where we are coming from and where our experience lies. So let me go into, are you seeing my screen? Are you all able to see my screen? Anyone? Okay, perfect. So I'm from PowerSchool, and the only thing we do is build software for schools. And we've been doing that for over 20 years. And one of the software, we have 20 plus software we focus on building schools today use 10, 15 different systems for various things. So our focus has been in unifying that experience so that even though it's 10, 15, they work as one. So I'm going to take one of those products, which is focused just on the learning experience, right? How do we help teachers teach better? How do we help students excel and get better outcomes? So that software is Schoology. I'm going to take that one software and show how we enable that. Let me give a brief about the company itself so you have some context. So we started 23 years back. At that time, the internet was at its, just an infant. So we started with an online student information system, and we still lead that market there. But then we were owned by Apple for 5 years. We were part of Apple Computers before they decided they want to focus on hardware and not really on industry solutions like education. And then with Pearson, in the last 5 years, we are part of Vista Group. Vista, if you're not familiar, is the fourth largest software conglomerate in the world. So there are 70 software companies that Vista owns, and PowerSchool is one of that. Recently, we just went public on the New York Stock Exchange. So that's a bit about the company itself. What I want to do is, again, to set the context of our overall product portfolio before I demonstrate the product, the learning management system. So our focus is on unified tech across whatever a school needs in any kind of system, whether it's an ERP or a learning management system or a teacher professional development system. We bring that together. Let me play a very short video on the mission of the company.
Behind each of us is a winding road that led to where we are today. For everyone, the path is different, filled with trials and passions, successes and failures. But most important are the people who show up at just the right time, ready to lend a hand. Because we don't just learn from perfect conditions. We learn from false starts, roadblocks, and moments of heartbreak. From the ups and downs of the journey and the people who guide us through. It's time for students to have tools that help them succeed on their own terms, and for educators and parents to have technology that puts them on the same team. To unlock possibilities and break barriers for students, they require the latest innovations at their fingertips. That's why we're here, to support their potential with the technology they need to succeed, because every student deserves the best opportunities in life, no matter where they're coming from or where they're going. PowerSchool.
All right. So to enable that mission, really, we have a suite of products, right? So one is a student information system at the core. Then we have solutions used in the classroom for teaching and learning. Could be assessment solutions, learning management systems, gradebook solution, things like that. We have unified administrative solutions for finance, payroll, things like that. And for what we call unified talent to help teachers excel. But what I'm going to do today is just take one solution from our unified classroom. I'm going to take a Schoology learning management system and then talk about that. But briefly about PowerSchool, we are headquartered in the US. So far, till last year, our focus had been in North America. And in North America, there are 60 million students in the US, of which more than 45 million use at least one of our software. So it's very high scale, and we have worked with almost every school district in the US. But in the meantime, there are schools in 90 plus countries that have used our software. Even in India, last 4 years, there are many schools that have used, not because we approached them, but they were approaching us, so we enabled them. But we had really not looked at India as a place where we should focus on and have more schools use our software. But starting this year, that's what we are doing. And again, in Asia, we have had over 500,000 students. In India, it's kind of schools. It's a mix of both, where we started, it's a mix of both high-end international schools as well as CBSE, IC schools. But this year, we have seen a lot of mainstream schools using our learning management system. that's about this. And let me talk about, just before I jump to the software to show you how it works. But again, Schoology is a learning management system used in 60,000 schools worldwide, more than 20 million users, including students and teachers. And these are some of the schools that use this in India. But let me again play a very short video.
We created Schoology in 2009, really with the mission of continuously advancing what's possible in education. At the click of a button, you can personalize education, you can assess student strength and weakness, you can grow student outcomes like you've never been able to do before. Schoology is a learning management system that simplifies the teaching and learning process by connecting people with all of the tools that they need in one simple platform. Schoology has made it possible for the boundaries of the classroom to be extended beyond just the brick and wall. The reality is that people are online all the time. Students and learners have devices in their pockets, and they expect that same sort of immediacy from education. The goal for us has been to be able to deliver that kind of experience anytime, anywhere, and on any device. One of the core things that's great about Schoology is the focus on communication and collaboration. And what we've tried to do is make that a core part of the platform so that it's infused in students' learning and teachers' teaching every single day. Those are two elements that are so critical for success in life in general. We see it all the time where educators are actually collaborating with other educators, not just within the same institution, not even in the same region, but potentially even broader around the world, across the country. And they're sharing not only ideas, but resources, best practices, even sometimes full lessons and units that can be used in other people's coursework. Everything is right at their fingertips.
All right. Now, of course, these are videos that are set in US schools. But again, over the last 2 years, we worked with schools in India, and we know that the software works very well for Indian schools. Now, the thing with software, education software, is it doesn't travel across borders very well, right? Because schools are different, the focus is different, regulations are different, the stress on what aspects of education is different. So we don't, a lot of the products that we have in North America are not a great fit for India. However, our learning management system we've seen is an exact fit, and our schools are using that, and therefore that's the one software that we bring to India, and we are having schools use them. So let me, before I jump off, just one last slide. Our software brings together everybody in the ecosystem, right? The students, teachers, parents and admins, and principals and administrators, and parents. So for students, it's about how do we help them, how do they get personalized learning to match their pace and their learning style? How do they, now a lot of the learning, school is not the only place learning happens, right? The schools, schools, teachers give work at home, and unless the student is doing work at home, they're not going to excel. So how do we enable the schools to influence that learning into home so that it's a whole holistic process? How do we improve student engagement? And how do we integrate their experience? They're not learning from 15 different places, but one software that gives them everything. And for teachers, again, it's extending influence of what student is doing at home, lessons and resources. How do we do assessments and auto grading? How do we intervene based on knowing which student is weak at what, and how do we help those students get better? So those are things that some of the things that we help teachers address. And of course, for principal admins, it's about, technology can really help schools build leadership in the metrics that matter to them. And the other thing that Siddharth had talked about, data and insights. How do we equip the decision makers with the right data so that they can make the decisions that are needed? And finally, parents, what's real-time information? Today, a parent goes to a school teachers meeting, parents teachers meeting every quarter maybe, and they get a report card, and there's not a lot of information beyond that into, okay, why is my child not doing as well, what should he get better at? So those are things that we can enable parents, real-time information, communication to parents, and ultimately helping parents become champions for the school. Now, just one aspect, while Schoology is a learning management system, there are so many wonderful other software across the globe, right? Some are free, some are paid for, but what we do is build Schoology, it builds an ecosystem for that. So for example, within Schoology, you can use Google Drive or OneDrive, Google Docs. So any productivity tools that you're already using, you will use within Schoology because it's integrated. Any video conferencing systems like Zoom or Microsoft Teams that you're using, again, you could use within Schoology. Any content and curriculum that you've subscribed to or you want to use from the web, again, you can use it within Schoology. So it becomes one software, one ecosystem that helps bring together everything that a teacher and student needs. And finally, before I jump off, let me finish with one of the, we usually see two questions in educators' mind. They see the technology, they see how it can fit their context, but they have two worries. Maybe it's too expensive. Actually, it is not. Like I said, technology today is very affordable, and for 20 rupees a month or so, schools can completely do everything that we've talked about, right? So it's affordable. And the second thing that people worry about is, are my teachers ready to, I don't think they're familiar enough with technology. I'm worried if they would be actually able to capitalize on the software. So again, time and again, we hear, this is a recent school, Winberg Allen in Missouri, who deployed our software. And they're saying, this proved to be a transformation for the teachers who are not so good with technology, right? Within a few days, with almost no training, everybody was up and running. So basically, our teachers are today capable of using Word documents and WhatsApp and the basic web tools. That is enough to use every advanced software that is out there. With that, let me, I'm going to walk you through the software, but if some of you want to learn more, you can join this interactive workshop that we're doing on 16th and 13th. It's free. You can nominate your educators and teachers. That will give them more exposure to what is possible using software, and that could be a training for them in how they can use technology better in their classroom. With that said, let me jump to the Schoology software itself. Let me do a time check. Okay, 10 minutes. So this is the Schoology software. I'm logged in as a teacher. Now there are different logins. This brings everybody together, right? Teachers, administrators have their own login, students have their own login, and the parents have their own login, and they could access from the web or through mobile apps, right? So it brings everybody together in the first place because all are important aspects of the same objective, which is helping the student excel and learn better. Let me start with what is the core of the software, which is courses. So if I'm logged in as a teacher here. So I'm a teacher, let's say I have a class for Indian history grade 12. All my learning resources I have organized within Indian history grade 12. I might be doing my own classes, but these are learning material I've assigned to students, and I expect them to finish them in a certain cadence. Some of it could be in the class, some of it could be at home, but this is the lessons I've made accessible to my students. So when I clicked on that, and this is, student sees a very similar view. As a teacher, I have organized my class on, 3 themes and 4 units. It could be, now the school and the teacher have the flexibility to do it the way they want. Some schools that we work with have a centralized content team who's creating all of this and making it accessible to the teachers. And some schools allow the teachers to empower them to add their own lesson plans to this or create it on their own from scratch. But this is an example of how a class could look, right? So let's say Indian history in the first unit about learning about the first cities. So here you see this teacher has wants the students to watch a YouTube video on to get an introduction. There's a discussion. There's a project they want the student to complete. There is an online class that is due, that is coming up for the student that they have to attend. There is an assessment. So these are things that a teacher can add. Let me show again an example of how content could look. Now, this is a teacher has found a great video on archaeology, which is she wants the students to watch first. So this is YouTube. I'm not going to play the whole video, but what I want to point out is the YouTube video plays within the software itself. You don't have to, it's integrated. You don't have to send a link to the student. So it allows the student to learn here, and it helps the student track who completed and who didn't, right? So let me, that's an example of how content can be taken from various parts of the web and stitched into a course that the teacher is providing students, right? This gives a structured way for students to learn. Let me give another, and again, the content itself, this content, here, after that, the teacher is given a discussion, right? Sometimes it's not just a lecture, but students have to be engaged and involved in it. So after that, the teacher has asked them to be part of a discussion. Why do you think that this civilization is built close to Indus River? So Mithika, the student, has given a comment. The others might give comments. You can like, unlike, reply. So you're building a discussion. It's not just a class, and you're building that engagement. This goes back to some of the other things that we saw, right, on the uniform question. It's really about engagement. There are other ways to, while it's important, I think being on video and other things do help engagement, but there are other things that we can do to build engagement, such as online polls, discussions, things in the classroom that actually, that they have to be part of. So this is an example of that. So that's the second thing. One, it brings everybody together. Second is help the students in the school set up and create a lesson plan that builds over time, right? Again, it could be done centrally by the school, but what we do see is in the beginning of the year, they might have done 60% of where they would have liked it to be, but then over the year, they build another 30%. Next year, they add on to it. So this is a lesson plan resources that is continuously building for the school. So the next thing I want to share is how assessments can be done, right? So again, as a teacher, I just, I can add a material. That material could be an assessment. It could be just a file from the web, right? It could just be a link or a file from my computer or something that the HOD wants to share with the student. All of this can be done here. So again, if I want to set up a discussion, it's simple to set up. And if I want to set up an assessment, I just add assessment and I can create it, and I can decide, what category of assessment is it, for what period is it, when is the submission due, what is the factor for, does it get factored in for grades, and whether it's pass fail. You can set various standards for it. And you can also decide you want to give for only one or few students or for the entire class, etc. Right? Again, sometimes when you identify groups of students who probably need help in a particular thing, you can create resources like this and assign just to those students. So that is assessment. Let me show just one aspect of assessment. This is resources the teacher has. They can have personal resources. They can also use other people's resources that they have shared. I'll show it a bit later. But let me show an example of how an assessment could look, right? So this is a math assessment. I'm going to show a preview so that it looks like what the student looks like. So I have taught this chapter in math, and I've given this assignment to my student, and the student has to take it within the next 3 days. So assessment could be of various different types, right? This is this question is highlight what is wrong, right? This question could be, ISP, right? So ISKE, you could do things like that. You could align on various timelines. You could do graphs. So again, there are 18 different, anything that you want to think of in terms of an assessment question, you can build it here easily. This one is, highlight, what is a part of the image. This is, you want them to do a calculation and then provide the answer. You can decide whether you want to give a calculator or not, but you're asking for an answer. This one is you're asking them to actually show the working, right? 3x plus, so that you can actually see what they're doing. So this can be a multiple choice. So there are so many different types of questions. Anything that you want, you could ask. And the nice thing is, except for this type of short answers and 2 others, 15 of the 18 can be auto-graded. So if I finished my class today on energy and I gave my students this assessment and I asked for them to return it in 2 days, at the end of 2 days, I get the whole scorecard and I can then set it up for the students to either see the answer or for me to look at the results and go back to the students who need that help. So again, this you can see how it helps students practice more because it takes away the load from the teacher of having to assess it every day. But if they do want to assess it, we give them rubrics to do that. So that is the assessment aspect of it. Now, once they finish the assessment, let me come back to, once they finish the assessment, the scores need to, again, go back into gradebooks, right? So we have a built-in gradebook. For that same course, I see that I've given the project for this project. These are my students. These are the scores that they have got. And if I want to add a comment, okay, 9. So, this person's got a 2. I want to talk to them. Hi, Arun. We need to work on this, right? Whatever the comment, I can decide whether to display to the student or not. So you have the gradebook automatically built in, and the teacher has the ability to do that. Now, if you do want to go beyond that, right? It's not just what they got here, but you want to know what aspect of it they really do know and don't know. So quickly, I can show how mastery works, right? So now each topic, let's say, let's take the same algebra, right? Do you know how to do square roots? Could be one of the learning objectives. Now, so questions are mapped to the learning objectives, and you could set it up to say who's advanced here, who's proficient, who still needs help. And the school can decide what you want to call it and what level proficiency or developing is. Then I can see here that Arun needs help across all these learning objectives. But maybe there could be places where there's so many students who need help on one particular learning objective. So then I know that, okay, a lot of people don't know how to do square roots well. So I'm going to do a special, intervention so that I can get those students and help them. So this helps teachers in multiple ways, in not just giving them a score, but to understand what is under the hood of why students are doing well or not doing well. Then I could also, and a lot of the, teaching is about communicating maybe additional content, or maybe there are things I want to send updates to students. So I could send update to my entire class. Let's say I want to post this and saying, tomorrow come prepared for quiz, right? So, and I can format it, add thing, etc. I can add a file to it, which is what is the quiz actually I want them to participate in, right? Or I could give a YouTube link, or I could also give a video message. Hey kids, tomorrow we have this, come prepared for a quiz. So I can start recording and I stop recording and it gets uploaded, right? And same way, students can communicate across with the teachers on audio or video or text. Let me jump off to another thing again, which is important, which is communication. Let's take a simple example of how schools communicate with parents. Today, it could be SMS and other things, but we know that many times parents don't see SMS, and it's a separate system that I need for that. But I could do communication with the entire class, or with a particular student, or with a parent, or a group of teachers. Let's say the math HOD wants to send a communication to all teachers in the math class. They can again create an update and post it. and teachers will receive a notification, and they know that what they need to do. So this again has got communication built in. Let me just close off with a couple of things. One is conferences. A lot of times, of course, teachers are scheduling conferences, but then the conference time and link, etc., has to be sent through other means. Now, Schoology has online conferencing built in, so lessons could be online or offline. But I could schedule a conference here, which is a tool called Big Blue Button. It's integrated inside, and I could create a class, let's say, for 2 days later. Or if I'm more familiar with using Teams or Zoom, again, many schools integrate, it's very easy, just a click of a button, you'll have Zoom within that. And you can schedule within this, and all the recordings stay within that. So conferencing is an integral part of your learning. And finally, I just want to show one thing before I close off. I had talked about the App Center, right? Which is not just one software, but there are 200 plus different software from across the globe that is integrated. Okay, so we have an App Center. Now you see that these are the types of apps that are integrated already. Google Drive, many teachers create assignments on Google, and they want to give it to students. So again, you can create it on Google Docs and you can assign it to students. So I created one document, but I have 50 students. When the students opens it, they get their own individually tagged assignment they can submit. There are things like, you might have subscribed to content like McGraw-Hill, or you might have, Edpuzzle is a very popular puzzle quizzing program. You might want to integrate from YouTube. So all of that is already integrated. You just have to add it to your own resources. Let me finish off with what I want to show is resources. Again, I'm pointing this out because in the conversation we saw how it would be nice to build a community of practice, right? So each teacher, for example, has access to what we think of as public resources. There are 60,000 schools that use our software, and many teachers make it public because they've created something really wonderful. They want to share it with the community. So for example, so here's a grammar lesson created by someone. It's rated 5-star by 758 people, downloaded nearly 30,000 times, and these are the things, right? So I could look at that and I say, okay, this is, difference between there, etc. And I can download it and then use that as part of my own learning resources. So not everything has to be created, used, built by the teacher, but these kind of resources are available. So again, in that sense, it's really building about that community of educators, not just having teachers work in isolation. And finally, there is something what we called groups. Now, not everything, right? This is going back to Siddharth's point. Not everything in a school is just grouped by classes. Sometimes you might have a debating team. Sometimes you might have a team that is focused on, let's say, Olympiad. Sometimes you might have a group of teachers, let's say physics teachers. So you could, So we have what's called a group functionality. Again, you could add up groups. For example, it could just be teachers, parents, advisory board. And then you could again have discussions and resources and materials within that. So I think that I kind of showed what are the things that is possible, what are the issues that could be addressed in schools using a holistic system like this. So let me stop there and come back to the discussion. I hope that, kind of gave a sense of what technology can do today. Of course, there are many other software out there, but the point is a lot of problems in the classroom can be solved, and a lot of opportunities exist today to embrace tech. So I hope that gave a brief view. Thank you.
Okay, Ravi, let me be honest. I have seen many software till now, and I also come from IT background, so I understand technology. I think what you guys have developed is quite robust and advanced, and since it has proven itself in so many sectors or so many countries already, I'm sure it will fit in Indian context also. Some schools are already using it. Personally, I quite liked it, and now that I look at chat and how the kind of response that we are getting, people are appreciating the work that you guys have done. Thanks for sharing this. And what interestingly, there were a few questions that also came in, which I think you've already answered. There are a couple of more questions related to what you were telling, how to customize it and the price point and all. I would recommend that you all please join the webinar that PowerSchool is organizing. Team School has already shared the link here. It's on 16th December and another one is on 13th of January. So the link is already in the chat. You can join that. You can have more information at that time in the webinar.
Thank you.
We have reached towards the end of our discussion. We've got so many questions in the Q&A panel, and some of the questions, though we already answered, but since they came back, I think maybe we can quickly address them again. One of my questions to Prabha ma'am was that being an experiential learning school or a school which is totally revolving around experiential learning, how are you integrating the practical project-based learning, experiential learning during the lockdown time, and how are you using technology? Ma'am answered that very well, but I can see there are some questions related to that have come up again. So maybe Prabha ma'am, I'll just read out these questions, and if you want to repeat your answer, or Arunabh or Siddharth or Ravi, you want to add something to it. So the questions that we have, one is, how can practical teaching be integrated into technology-based learning? That's one. And another one is, in an online class, integrating real-world collaboration is a challenge. How to overcome this? Slight modifications, but more or less the same thing. Prabha ma'am, maybe start with you.
Sure. I think the question is really around the pedagogy that's being used. So if it is about integrating practical real-world application, then whether it is online or it is offline, it's about recognizing that perhaps the learning needs to stem from a question rather than from a stand of wanting to disseminate knowledge about something. And somebody earlier used the example of energy as a lesson to be taught. So instead of probably beginning with saying, what are the types of energy? What's the difference between kinetic and potential energy? Maybe it needs to begin by saying, look, and I'm talking about a student in middle school or higher who knows the fundamentals of energy, of course. But to say, what is the problem you are seeing in the environment, which can then become something that you want to inquire further into and understand? And what are those concepts of energy that you already know about or have learned thus far, which can be solved through that? So I think it's about the pedagogy. It's about beginning with that question, whether it's online or offline. Then when it comes to the actual aspect of sharing of ideas and collaboration in the physical world, we would sit around a room in a physical world. We would probably use flip charts, discussion boards that would go up in your classroom. In an online world, there are collaboration tools available, right? There is Jamboard, there is Padlet, lots of those tools available. And like what Mr. Ravi Kittu just showed, if you were to use Schoology, I'm sorry, I don't know if I got that pronunciation right, but he showed a beautiful community discussion board there, and that becomes absolutely your point of where the discussion is further going on. So it's about addressing the pedagogy first. The technology is just an enabler to make sure that your teaching learning practice goes on all right.
Got it. Right. Arunabh sir, do you want to add something? And then I come to Siddharth sir.
No, there is overload of data already on the session. I don't want to compound to that. I've enjoyed this. Thank you.
Lovely. Siddharth,
I think we've got to look at this, as a good teacher in today's times is somebody who understands content, who understands pedagogy, and who understands technology. So somebody who is at the intersection of these three circles, I think that knowledge is really, really important. Somebody who understands all three.
So what I understand here is that we have got a large group of people, we call them teachers, who have been here in the industry for decades and decades. And I would actually say centuries, because the pedagogy has been continued. And now that all of a sudden technology has become important, some of them from that old generation have been able to migrate to the new world. And right now we have an overlap where we have teachers that understand technology and they are also well versed with the content or the knowledge that is there. And that overlap is right now the most valuable. which also means that perhaps, from where we started our discussion, this was one of the points that we had early in our discussion today, the teacher training becomes very critical. How do you keep your teachers up to the speed? So I think that also is quite important. So thanks for answering this. Ravi, do you want to add something, or then we can move?
I want to add something very quick, right? Which is, see, technology can do a lot of things, but teachers can do a lot of things much, much better, right? So it really comes to, there's some things technology is really good at, right? I can assess 1,000 students over and over every day and create a result in software, which is hard for a teacher. But a teacher can do things that technology is very far from doing. For example, a teacher can look at somebody's face and know whether he understood it or not. Right? Or they could look at a 10-step problem and know which step they went wrong in, which is all this kind of thing is still hard to do with tech. So it's about melding the best of what's teachers great at, and melding what is technology great at, and building that, blending that so that it works well as together.
Right. There is one more very interesting question. Although I know that most of us have the answer to that, but still, since the question has come, I am hoping that some of us can put it in a better way, in better words. So the question by Shime is, most of the edtech companies are providing lesson plans, but is it not necessary to leave it up to the teachers to decide their teaching strategies as the need of, as the need of the students? Arunabh, I want to start with you. So technology companies, edtech companies are providing lesson plans, but shouldn't that be in the hand of teachers instead of edtech companies? How do you want to answer this?
Vikramjit, you cycle? You cycle?
Okay.
I'm asking you, do you cycle?
I do, yeah, sometimes.
Okay. When you are starting to cycle, were there these wheels, little wheels next to your back wheel, like support wheels, or somebody supporting you from the back?
Early days, yes.
Yeah. So you chose to use it for a little while, and then you said, no, I am okay doing this on my own.
Correct.
So to me, these lesson plans are scaffolds. They're of use for some people, and some teachers are already way ahead. So I think let's look at the good intention of these tech companies rather than saying that you're telling me what to deliver. No, they're not telling you what to deliver. They're showing you one good way of delivering it and hoping that you're going to come up with something even better. Thank you.
Very well said. I want to share one incident. There was this one school way back, it has been few years now, and I was there to observe the teachers, how they are teaching. And there was this one topic going on. They pulled content from one of the edtech companies, and the content had some outdated information. It was regarding politics. So those politicians had changed, they had left office, the entire political scenario of that region had changed, but they were still giving old names. So after the session, I asked the teacher that, why didn't you point? Why didn't you correct that? That was wrong information that was passed to the students. She said that, no, we have instruction from the management that we have to use this edtech content or whatever content is coming in. So I cannot question it. If they have done it, I'm like, you are from the city, you know who's the political leader of the city. So
why blame fire for burning somebody when the intention was to only keep them warm?
Yeah.
So
very well said. Siddharth, sir, you want to add something to this?
I think enough has been said about it, and I think Arunabh put it absolutely well, that those are just scaffolds, and it's just to enable the teachers to think in the right direction. So yes, I believe that. Yes, totally.
I love the analogy that Arunabh did bring. So our software, we enable the schools to decide what they want to do, right? Whether they want to build it centralized or they want to give the teacher the ability to do that. Usually we've seen that they kind of create a starting point, and then they have to encourage teachers to do that. As 1 or 2 or 3 teachers start doing it, others do take it up. But one thing I do see is when we go to a school and just give the platform and say, it's a blank canvas, you have the ability to do what you want. Schools usually ask for, can you give me a starting point, right? Can you give me the content? Because I can't expect my teachers in next 3-4 months to put everything together. So while we are a platform and we are very neutral to content, we enable what the school wants to do. We do also partner on, if schools really want content, we enable them to choose and pick that content so that they do have a starting point.
Very well said, sir. Prabha, ma'am, quick comment from you, and then we can move towards the end.
I mean, I think enough has been said, and the minute Dr. Arunabh spoke about the balancing wheels, my mind is starting to think about, okay, balancing wheels, scaffolding, what other lovely analogies can we come up with? But that's really what it is about. This is not about technology versus teachers at all.
Absolutely.
It's just about understanding that the two need to come together, and teachers very much are at that center of teaching, learning how much of a technology we bring in to classroom or into our lives, because I think, like what we've touched on over and over again, the human element of it, and especially when we talk about school education, we're talking about children as young as 2.5, 3 coming into school and going through their tweens, teens, adolescent years. The human element simply cannot be taken out of it. So the focus needs to continue to remain on teaching, learning, on pedagogy. And if technology can help us do something by reducing teacher workload, saving time, making something more efficient, great. We should go for it. Otherwise, we should stick to our focus of making sure that we are delivering what has to be delivered in the classroom.
Very well said, ma'am. And today's discussion has been quite interesting. I got to learn so many new things, or rather the things that sometimes what happens is we know the thing, but when you get to hear it from someone else in a different way, like the analogy that Arunabh used of training wheels, it kind of changes the perspective, the way you look at that particular subject. We have already overshot our time by 1 minute, so I won't be able to take any more questions, and I won't be able to pull this discussion any longer. It has been lovely. Thank you all the panelists for joining and for sharing your views. Thank you, Ravi, for showing us such a wonderful system and how we are one step closer to technology. And thank you all the panelists, all the participants who are here on Zoom and through social media watching us live. This has been a lovely session, and I hope you all enjoyed. So thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.